describe the Seahawks standard. I say in quotation marks. And let me lay it out for you in case you're like, what are you talking about here, Paul? I'm talking about what's the expectation that the Seahawks should hold for themselves every single season, and that they do hold for themselves every single season. Are they a Super Bowl or bust team? Are they a team that's about winning the NFC West every year? Is the goal just to get into the playoffs every single season? What's the standard? Over the last couple of years, this is a team that makes the playoffs. That's what the standard's been. And you have made some changes, and there has been some accountability. You have changed coordinators, defensive coordinator, offensive coordinator now a couple of times, after results that have, at their peak, once you get into the playoffs, been, hey, look, we beat the Lions. Hey, look, Blair Walsh shanked the field goal. We beat them. Hey, look, we were able to take down the Philadelphia Eagles, who ended the game with Josh McCown. And I do understand why some people are perhaps frustrated with the lack of progress recently, because you would think when you get to a Super Bowl, and even if there was a changing of the guard in the roster of this Seahawks team, once you've been to back-to-back, you expect that you're going to be to a Super Bowl again. And instead, the Seahawks have not really been able to make any dent in the playoffs. So I think it stands to reason that right now, the Seahawks standard that they're currently holding is, let's get into the playoffs and figure it out from there. And there are people who want it to be higher than that. And I understand. I empathize. Should be higher. I mean, this was a team that made it to back-to-back Super Bowls. I put the question out on Twitter, what is the Seahawks standard? Is it the Super Bowl every year? Is it the NFC West title every year? Is it the playoffs every year? Or is it having a winning record every year? 46%, the vast majority, said playoffs every year, with 31% saying it's the NFC West title every year. Okay, and that's granted. And I think those are good standards to have. Those are good minimum standards to have for a season. But they got 2 of those last year, right? And everyone wants to hold themselves to a high standard. I think that's an important part of life. You're not going to be your best if you're not holding yourself to the highest possible standard that you can. But if you're not getting to the Super Bowl every single year, you are a lot like 31 other teams in the NFL. The team that could perhaps claim the highest standard in NFL history of their minimum expectations every single season were the New England Patriots of the last 2 decades with Tom Brady. The expectation was, I think, every single year that they were going to be in the AFC Championship game, at the very least to make it to the divisional round of the playoffs. So you can't have that as your standard, right? I mean, that's an unrealistic standard to have. So say you're meeting your standard of the playoffs every year and winning an occasional NFC West divisional title. You're meeting it. So do you really want to, all of a sudden, take a look at Pete Carroll, this guy who supposedly has too much power, your head coach and executive vice president, and say, bye? Because when you hear Russ and Mark Rodgers and Russell's court saying that Pete has too much power, that is what they are trying to create the conversation for. And if that's the route that Russell Wilson wants to go, I'm very curious as to where it would lead should the Seahawks actually listen to him. I don't think it would end very well. What is the standard for the Seattle Seahawks? I'm going to answer that question. I'm going to answer that question in the elitist way that you would expect me to. Because, yeah, over the course of this show, I've been hearing from you. I mean, I would not be honest with myself if I were not saying that the second round of the playoffs are where these playoffs actually begin. I'm that guy. Wild card, cute, that's neat, splendid, wonderful. Nope. Playoffs begin in the second round, even with now there only being, what, 1 bye per conference? You should be making it to the second round of the playoffs every single year if you're the Seahawks. That's the standard that I will hold you to. And this year was a failure. Now, getting to the conference championship every single year, I would like to get to a point where I could say that about the Seahawks, but I can't. I can't honestly say that, no matter how much of a perfectionist I am. Thanks, Mom and Dad, instilling values in me to be good at school. Thank you. Now nothing's enough. But that's the standard that I feel that should be had for the Seahawks. Divisional round. And what you do after that, it's a bonus. but get to the divisional round and don't lose to the Rams.